Hello, welcome to Track Talk Live. I am Leah, and I am here today, first of all, with Doug Hodgdon, fondly known as Mr. Clickety. How's it going, Doug?
Excellent.
Perfect. And if you missed him the last time, we have with us a well-published HO Soo Line modeler from right here in Minneapolis, Chooch Rivard. Hey, Chooch.
Hello again, Leah.
Yes.
Nice to be back.
It is nice to be back.
This is fun.
We had a lot of fun last time, and I'm sure we'll get into more fun a little bit later. But before we dig into your questions and some demonstrations that we have ready for today, I'm going to give you a little announcement. We have pulled together 10 of the best household items that you can use on your layout. It's an affordable way to add amazing scenery to your layout. I know Doug is always talking about the best price is free, so this will be a great guide. You can download it by clicking the banner underneath your video or the link in the description as you watch and dig right into your household items. But without any further ado, I think we can get right into checking in with Doug. Doug, what have you been up to since
Well, I'll
last
tell
weekend?
you, we have model railroad weather here in Minnesota right now, and to be honest, in the past 2 weeks, I really haven't gotten a lot done. I mean, other than shoveling snow. But
we have enough of it.
I did want to show this. This is my current NMRA magazine I just got, and they are advertising the big NMRA convention this summer, which will be in July this coming year. And they're talking about a really good convention, and I plan on being there.
Oh,
so
yes.
Maybe Bob will actually be there.
Yeah,
Will you be there?
you came last year. That was fun.
Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to let you know about that. If we have time, I'll talk about a couple. Well, I'll tell about the bridge real quick. I just brought this bridge because, as a bit of a reminder, we want to do probably a whole show on bridge design and bridge building.
Yes.
And so I just brought this as just kind of a little reminder for the upcoming shows. If you have any questions or things you'd like to see regarding bridges, let us know.
a little reminder, things
Yeah,
to come.
there you go. Yeah.
How about you?
If you want to talk about bridges real quick.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Bob
we
had some
wanna-
pictures.
If Nate wants to take the shot here of the, so this is a scene that I keep in my garage rafters. It's not on my railroad, but it's a section of a module I can take around, take to train shows. But this is a section of the High Line in Northeast Minneapolis. And in 1980, I modeled this trestle, and I mean, I was up there with a tape measure, taking measurements. So it's built one-to-one exactly, the exact measurements of this trestle. And let me go to the next shot here.
You could actually bring in your model.
Yes, I can actually, I'll bring this in next time.
Yeah.
And there's the trestle, the classic Soo Line pile trestle. There's a beam going across, and otherwise, and I take my modules outside sometimes to do my photography because it's hard to beat actual natural sunlight for photography.
Yeah, that's really a great shot.
So there's a helper engine on the back of that Rock Island Sioux transfer.
What year would that have been with the wood caboose and the...
Well, this is, what's neat is that the wood caboose era goes into my era of 1977.
Okay.
Around 80, they started to phase out the plywood cabooses. But, Broadway Pizza has that Soo Line wood caboose.
Well, I was going to say it's a more modern load.
Yes.
That's what got me thinking about
Oh,
that.
this is classic, perfect for 1975 this would probably be because of the engine, but shoving away there on the back end.
Nice picture.
Great. Well, I'm keeping an eye on your questions, so if you have any, make sure to plug them on in, and I will feed them to Doug and Chooch as we continue on with the show. And while we're waiting for some questions to pop in, anything else you'd like to talk about? Any photos you've brought? Anything that you want to bring to the audience today?
Well, last time I showed weathering that Soo Line Atlas boxcar, and you'll see this coming up in my little slideshow. I think Nate's going to
We're going to
that
show
now,
a selection of slides to
And
kind of as a continuation of what we were doing last time.
I can show you guys my railroad.
Yeah.
What I do, what I've
Let's
been
do
doing
it.
since 1980 here. So
Let's see
you'll
it.
see a few shots here.
Now, as we're bringing
And,
it up, this is a
this is-
continuation of what you were working on last time, you said?
Yes, here we go, right here. So this is a scene in my this is a scene, this is the crossing that I grew up watching trains at. Since I was a kid in the late 60s. I still go up here and watch trains, but in 1977, when I took this photo, that's what the crossing gates look like, and there's a train going by. The Soo Line's double main line through the Twin Cities, it was so busy, the Soo Line built 2 mains for 12 miles up to St. Paul from northeast Minneapolis, and that's what I model in my basement. And there's the next shot. There's my model of what you just saw.
Fantastic.
in HO scale. And even have the car on the other side of that crossing.
Yeah, what the heck? I was going to say, what's that guy doing? He's on the wrong side of the gate.
Yeah, well, and back then you could turn onto McKinley.
Oh.
Now they blocked McKinley off about 5 years ago. It's a cul-de-sac, so.
Oh.
Yeah, but this is, I had to scratch build those gates. You can't go into a store and buy those. So I modeled them exactly as and I have a tortoise machine under there. Doug, you can relate to that. And it makes the gates go up and down. I've got a circuit hooked up, so, with photo cells. So this is a wonderful shot taken by Chooch Rivard from Chicago area, and he came up here in the late 70s, 1978. He took this, and this is another scene on my railroad in New Brighton, and there's my model of that scene you just saw at 35W.
And now
I love the side-by-side
Yeah,
shot
you
that
can
Nate
really
did
see
for
it.
us here.
You built
That is
that
so
freeway
cool.
bridge.
Yes, I went to the highway department. Back then in 1980, you could go, oh, I'd like to build, and they'd do, on microfilm, they'd print out the blueprints, the plans for the bridge, and it was built at a 7-degree angle to the freeway. I wouldn't have known that if I didn't have the plans. Now, I'm sure today you can't, they are not going to give you plans for a freeway bridge. But back then, they did.
Might be a little more troublesome to come by.
Well, yeah.
But we're going to talk about that bridge in detail, too, coming up.
There's another, my favorite scene at Cardigan Junction. The depot was raised in late 1984. It was a 100-year-old depot, and there was the brand new GP38s, and there's my recreation of the scene in HO scale here.
That is really nice. Now, are we going to talk about
And
building
there's the
depots?
side-by-side at some point.
We're going to talk about building depots, too.
Back then in 1980, when I had to build my depot out of wood. The styrene wasn't available yet. They didn't have the evergreen products yet.
So that your depot's built out
It's
of wood?
built out of wood, yep.
Yeah,
Same
okay.
with the New Brighton depot also, which to
Is there
this
a
day is preserved up at Long Lake.
Is there a way you could bring that in? Is that removable after layout?
No. I'll build another one for that
okay,
purpose.
okay.
You know, here's another recreation I did I took in 1977, my exact modeling year, going by Cardigan Junction, and there's my model recreation in HO scale. And there you can see, we were talking about my photo backdrops that I used of the real Cardigan Junction scenery.
So this is, you took pictures of the real trees
Yep.
that are at the real location.
And I pasted them on my masonite backdrop.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And we're going to talk about that on another show, too.
Yep, absolutely.
All of these things we're going to talk about in
Now,
detail.
there's John Cartwright's famous watercolor. He does watercolors. You'll see him he's always at the State Fair down by the grandstand. He does paintings of railroad depots in Minnesota and North Dakota. And there's Cardigan. And he did this to depict 1955. And there's my recreation of 1977, that same scene.
Yeah, that
at
is a
Cardigan Junction.
good scene. I like the cloud, too.
There's the side-by-side.
So we can critique these, Bob, as we go along.
Feel free. Feel free, you guys. Nice.
I certainly wouldn't be able to. I'm still learning. Maybe one of the times that we do a demonstration, I'm going to get some coaching, and I'm going to try it.
We're going to do that. We're going to work on some things through the winter, some ideas for shows, and we'll pre-publicize them. Mm-hmm. And then we're talking about a diorama, maybe a diorama the size of this table that we can work on.
Well, one of the neat things is that nowadays modelers have, like when Doug and I started out, you built your bench work, you built scenery, the sub-foundation they call it, I guess, from wood, plywood, home. So now they have they use the pink foam that they insulate houses with. So you go to Home Depot, you buy your piece of pink foam, cut it up, and that's your scenery base. And it's strong, it's lightweight, so if you're going to build a railroad, you would build it out of that these days. And you can build it modular, and if you have to move it, it's not an issue. And we'll build our scenery with that, with the pink foam as our base.
Yeah, and then all the various detailing. We're talking about a kind of a generic piece of scenery that would have a little bit of everything. Rock casting, retaining walls, trestle with a stream running under it, where we would use
A gloss medium.
and maybe a tunnel. So anyway, a little bit of everything.
Abutments for the bridge.
All of that. So that's kind of what we're thinking about for the upcoming shows through the winter.
All right, we're a little slow on the questions, so just a reminder, feed them into the chat box whenever you have a question. Even if it doesn't necessarily pertain to what exactly we're chatting about at the moment, we're always happy to answer the questions. I'll feed them to Doug or Chooch as they come in. But in the meantime, What else have you got here? I see some photos that we've got.
No, we're talking about the
were
weathering, the side-by-side weathering pictures. You got
Oh,
those,
yes.
right?
Yes, well, we could
Yeah.
talk about the BN boxcar.
Ooh.
There you go.
Because
Yes.
There you go.
I
Yep.
weathered the Soo Line boxcar for you guys last time. Well, this is if we take this, if Nate takes this, that's perfect. Thanks, Nate.
There we go. Yeah.
Last time when I showed my demonstration live, I was not happy with how the paint was peeling off the roof. Well, if you use silver paint, the paint won't stick to it as readily, and it's easier to peel off with your tape. You can see the paint that comes off, your green paint, your base color over the silver. And there shows our progress. I'm adding some weathering powder, some decals here. There you see the prototype shot right there. It's on the top. I'm using a pencil now to enhance the rivets.
That's the
Artist
artist pencil and
that's
a
all.
rusty color.
And I just hit the rivets.
Yep.
Now I'm using my powders. I'm using some airbrush weathering. Finishing up with the powders. There's my finished boxcar to match my prototype photo. And there's outside taking on my diorama. That's the finished
Now, that roof
boxcar.
really looked great on that previous picture because you used all those techniques
Yes.
that you did at the last show
Yeah.
on that roof.
peeling
there
paint
was,
technique.
The peeling paint was the start, but then you also did rust and
Yes.
all of that.
And
Okay,
it's a
so-
combination of three methods I like to use. I use start out with airbrushing, the powders I showed, the aim powders. So it's a kind of a combination of three different techniques. And the oil paints, of course, for simulating the rust blotches. This car doesn't have a lot of rust blotches. It's just the basic powder and airbrush weathering.
Looks good, though.
It turned out good. I'm real happy with it. So, yes.
Yeah. So you practiced that the last time?
Well, in the prototype, using a prototype photo is always my inspiration for a modeling project. So that, in fact, if we want to even take my shot on my laptop here, I'll talk about that briefly.
Well, we have a couple questions
okay.
for you,
cool.
Chooch. We've got one from a guest that says, "Hi, Chooch. When did you first start modeling railroads? How did you get interested in the hobby?"
See, I've always been interested. You know, my whole life. My mom says I would see the train, you know, when I was 4 or 5, and so I got my first Lionel. Back in the early 60s, every boy wanted a Lionel train set growing up in the 60s. You go through the Sears catalog, oh, neat, I want that. And then I graduated, oh, HO scale. I got an HO train set for Christmas one time. It's like, okay, that's a game changer for me. And so I got into the scenery and modeling, and HO to me is such a perfect scale because there's so much available for us modelers. Decals, paint. I can duplicate any Soo Line equipment or engine in HO scale.
Fantastic.
And I always like to talk about the era because that's important to me. And so you're doing your era
Yes.
is
1980
Yeah.
was when I started building
Yeah.
the railroad. So Frank, Jordan, and I, we just started to discover that, gee, we really should come up with an era for
Yeah.
specific modeling. So I chose 1977. That was the year the Soo Line still was running all their neat engines. We're still running the old, they call them F units with the rounded nose. And it's just, to me, a perfect era. The GP38s had just come out, brand new. So
Cool,
GEs
cool.
were still running.
cool stuff.
Well, John has a question specifically about your layout. Can you tell us about your layout?
Specifically, well, I always wanted to, I live 3 blocks from the old Soo Line. I still live in that same neighborhood I grew up in.
Northeast Minneapolis.
Northeast Minneapolis, and I would go up to the tracks and watch the Soo Line coming up the hill, and I would hear them starting out of the yard, and I'd go up on my bike and watch the train. And you know what? I still do it to this
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
I watch the train. They still run trains that way now. But I love that area, and I ended up modeling. It's like I always knew someday I want to model the double tracks through Northeast Minneapolis on the Soo Line.
All right. So a little hometown model.
Yes.
I like it. Oh, we've got another question from a user called Winterhawk70. I am rebuilding my layout, and part of it is the mountain division of the old B&M. My problem is the rise from North Conway Station Yard up through Crawford Notch, and then back down to base level. What is the best way to do this? I really don't want to use a helix unless this is the only way. Ideas?
See, I have no problems building a helix. I built a helix, and if I was to do my helix over again, I would use different techniques. I'd use a different wood. But what are your thoughts on that, Doug? Because I think
Well,
of a helix right away.
I've been there.
Okay.
I know the scenery, I have been there, and I'll tell you, the scenery is so fantastic. You wouldn't want to have a helix, I mean, because you want to have your trains running through this scenery. And so, of course, now he didn't mention, maybe if you send us another comment, but we don't know the size of your room. But I would say that generally speaking, you want to be able to take that advantage of that beautiful valley up there, and maybe do it around the wall, and if you have to, kind of wind it around the room, and maybe do a multi-level rather than helix. I mean, yeah, because in this case, in this particular case, I don't think you want to hide the trains. I think you want to show them in that
You
scenery.
go off stage to get to the various levels. That's what I have done through the years. I have so much off stage trackage that goes off, they call it off stage, the scenery. Where you model, that's your stage. Trains are the actors. You go off stage, like Doug says, go around a wall to gain elevation.
Keep spiraling around.
I mean, unless it's a switchback situation, like they did do in the mountains to gain elevation back to another switch and go up. I don't think it's that situation though, is it?
No, this was a mainline
So you want to
railroad,
either loops.
Yeah. So well, if you just keep going around the room, you don't even have to hide it. You can
That's
just
what I would do.
Spiral up. It's like the room is the helix.
Yes.
Just keep going around the room and go up, and then everything can be scenic.
Yeah.
Okay. Good luck.
All right, let us know how it goes.
We've got another question from Dennis. Dennis says, I tend to have shorts with my Atlas code 100 number 6 switches, using with DCC Digitrax. Is this because I don't have the switches insulated? He's working on HO scale.
Well, they should be, Atlas switches should be insulated from
They call that DCC friendly, don't they?
Yeah, they should be already
but-
DCC friendly.
But I've found out that, having your gaps at the correct locations, feeders, it's still very critical for DCC. So it's
Now, yeah, the reason they made them, or the way they do DCC friendly is to have, the open point. If you happen to touch, in the old system, if the back side of the wheel touched the open point, it would short. But now that point should be the same polarity as the outside rail. So there's something
they call
funny.
that power routing.
Yeah,
the switch points route the power through the frogs.
Something funny happening there that it just absolutely shouldn't short.
And the other situation, you insulate the frog, you cut gaps around the frog area, and that's the normal way an Atlas switch, a normal Atlas switch would be insulated frog.
So it shouldn't be a problem. I wish I could help you more. Maybe if you want to email us in a picture of the switch, or a drawing of your wiring or something like that.
A next future topic could be, I'll show a diagram of how wire switch, like a crossover is a good example.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if he's feeding his frog, if they're metal frog switches, then the frog would be fed from, whatever his switch control device is, and the frog
Tortoise machine, they have contacts.
Yeah, the frog would change polarity, so you want to make sure that part is correct. Yeah, send us more information. I'd like to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Jeffrey. I have just re-entered the hobby after a 45-year absence.
All right.
Welcome back. Things are going well, but I have a lot to learn, particularly about scenery. Any hints to make it easier? My layout is an L shape, 18 inches wide, and 11 feet one way, and then 7.5 feet the other.
Well, you should watch our next few episodes, maybe. The first thing is get your layout built first before you get too much scenery in the way. Generally, you want to get your track in and make sure everything is running good before you add scenery, because you might have to crawl over your layout or something to get it a spot. So I would say get your layout put in the way you like it. Actually, a lot of times I have actually not even put in bridges. I built the layout straight through and just gone right straight through where the bridge would be, and then cut the bridge in later. So I mean that's an idea too, but you've got a good start there. There again, if you want to send us email us your track plan and kind of some design ideas that you have, we could help you more.
And as I was saying, the pink foam is what you do nowadays. They have different thicknesses. 2-inch would be a nice base, and you could maybe make a base of furring strips, 1x2s for to mount it on.
You don't need to do all kinds of fancy carpentry anymore.
So strong and so lightweight,
nice.
and you can work with it so easily now.
Yep, good point. You can cut it with a bread knife.
There's
or
so
a hot
many,
knife.
There's
or-
so many
yep.
things now that have come along since I
Yep.
built my railroad. It's very cool, actually. The track, you know.
Yep, for sure.
Awesome. Oh, we've got something coming in from Paul. Paul is just starting my G-scale layout last summer, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to build my roadbed cuts and fills, particularly the fills, to maintain my grades less than 3%. Before I retired, I was the coal transportation manager for Xcel Energy, and my team was responsible for the delivery of coal unit trains to the Black Dog, King, and Sherco plant.
Really?
That's kind of fun.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's in our backyard here.
Yeah, he must be kind of in the area.
Yes. Yes. Well,
have you ever-
now, what's that?
I was going to say, have you ever used that concrete mix where you actually do the fill, the actual way you fill it in with the earth? Then there's I forget the type of concrete, to actually brush on a concrete mix over the top of the earth to keep it from washing
That's what
away.
Marv Koenig does up in Big Lake. He's modeling G-scale outdoors, and he's doing some concrete roadbed areas.
Okay,
In
is that
fact,
like
I think
patching
most of it-
concrete or something, or the quick set concrete?
I'm not sure what he uses. See, now
Yeah.
in my situation, I do G-scale in my backyard. That's my summer
Yeah.
escape from my basement, right? And I just use that trap rock that I get up at the rock place in New Brighton.
For
there
the fill.
on Highway 8. Yep, for the ballast. And in for the fill, I just use dirt. I use real dirt, or I build up my grades with landscape blocks.
Do you
And-
compact
and
it
then
or
the
anything?
dirt is behind the landscape blocks. You can if you want. I have not.
It doesn't wash away or
10
anything?
years, and I don't. Sometimes you might have a little washout. When I have washouts, like let's say where your rain downspouts are from your house, I build a little bridge, just like the prototype.
There
So
you
the
go,
water
okay.
can route under a little bridge, and it gives you an excuse to have a nice little trestle.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
All right, there's some
Good.
ideas to get you going. Let's move on to a comment from T. Mars. Hi, has anyone modeled 3 scales on one layout? I have N, HO, and O. Was thinking about building all into the same layout. Having a sizing issue with the buildings and scenery.
Well, what I like to do, I like watching stuff. So I like watching all of the Alan Keller videos. I get ideas. I always get ideas. But there's some guys, some people like modeling Lionel. It reminds them of their childhood. So they'll incorporate a Lionel. They'll incorporate HO. You can do things like that if you want. You know, it's really cool. And so let's say one of the things is a forced perspective. So you might have an O scale layout, and you might want to have a building up on a hill. Well, you could use an HO building.
Yep.
That building is off in the distance. So there's an example of using other scales crossing over for buildings. But there's nothing that says you can't incorporate HO. You could maybe have that in the background, off in the distance, have a scene where a train's running through. In the foreground can maybe be a Lionel or O scale
Yep.
scene.
I've seen that done in museum settings. That's really effective, where you force the perspective.
Yep.
And you could use like every scale. You could start out with O in the front and then work your way to the back, and you can have in-scale
That's right. You could
buildings
do that
way in
too.
the back.
That's
And it really is
cool.
effective. It's a theatrical. I mean, I would call
It
it
is.
a theatrical way of building.
Especially
layout.
when people don't have space. If you have a 1 foot wide shelf railroad, you could use
Yep.
N-scale buildings for HO, let's say, in backgrounds, your N-scale buildings.
Ooh, that's exciting. Good luck. Let's move on to Dwight. Dwight of Northern Star Railroad Line says, oh boy, my favorite Made in Minnesota show. Yay!
All right.
It's very neat.
See you at the North Metro Train Show and Sale next week.
I'm going.
Are you going?
going?
Maybe I'll find another Atlas Jeep 7. I don't know.
Maybe we should go and
I love
meet Dwight.
I love seeing AJ when I go up there. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that could be fun.
That thing is so big.
And
it's
something
like,
to get us out of the snow.
I'm a little overwhelmed when I'm there. This
Oh,
thing
wow.
is amazing
Yeah,
what these guys are doing.
Yeah,
now.
the layout they have up there is pretty good too.
Yep. Yes, it is.
Oh, and Claire Lee says, hi from France. Bonjour.
Hi back.
That's
Now,
really
you know, we are open to the possibility of doing a live show from France.
If they send us, we'll go.
Yeah, if you want to set it up, we'll come.
They're laughing in the control room right now. Oh, we've got a question here from Bill Chu. You've been talking about this a lot, Chooch. How do you use pink insulation board? Mainly cutting pieces to fit?
Oh, it's so neat now. When I built the little section for the St. Louis convention last summer, I was working on this about 2 months before the convention, right? The prototype meet. And in my driveway, I was cutting all this pink foam to build my, there's a fill on the Soo Line, on the High Line, and I was modeling it, but I was using the pink foam. And it's so easy. I had an old bread knife. I'm cutting this, and it cuts so easily. In fact, if you score that pink foam, you can snap it just like a piece of styrene. And you use the adhesives, the various adhesives. I think PL200 I might have used to glue it onto to build your levels. And then it's so easy to cut it and shape it.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it's like building Mount Rushmore. You know, you can just put a big gob of foam on your layout and just start carving away. And
that's what I was doing. I was
see what
carving
happens.
it. So my driveway was full of this pink foam, these little parts.
Hey, you just go for it. You make a mess, but other than that, it's good.
Yeah.
Lots of good uses for it. Graham. Hi, Doug and Bob, watching live in Australia.
Hey, hi, Graham.
I know Graham.
We know him, yeah.
Graham models the Soo Line in Australia.
Ooh, that's exciting.
And there's guys all over the world. Frank Molly in Germany models the Camden line in North Minneapolis.
Ooh.
The way that looked in, I believe, the late 80s.
Let us know when you're coming back this way.
Yes.
All right. Well, Graham does have a question in the meantime.
Okay.
Can you explain the different uses of Shoreham and Humboldt yards?
Okay,
Cheers.
Bob.
No, we're talking.
Yeah, in what era, though?
Yeah, we talk. That's right. Is it today? Is it in my era? In my era of the late 70s, Shoreham was the terminal in Minneapolis for the Soo Line. So all trains ended up at Shoreham, and the various transfer jobs would run from Shoreham the 2.5 miles over to Humboldt, and they switched cars at Humboldt. They had switched jobs. Now today, Humboldt Yard is used more as a staging yard would be on a model railroad. There's not a lot of switching of cars there, but they do run a couple of various transfer jobs that come out of Humboldt still. They found out, the CP found out, they still have to have Humboldt for an integral yard, which is kind of cool. Shoreham today now that's been turned into an intermodal, so the piggyback trains come in there. There's 2 hot piggyback trains that come in to Shoreham every day and come around the big loop, and they set out some cars and continue west. And
well, Graham should come back and do some more research.
I'll take him for a tour.
Yeah, well, I'll take you out.
Yep.
Cheers. Oh, this next question is from a guest. What is a good source for realistic-looking ballast for my outdoor G-scale layout?
That's an easy one, because I do this all the time. This is what I deal with now. For 10 years, since I built my railroad outdoor, you use this I get it at D-Rock up in New Brighton on Highway 8. It's called Trap Rock, and they sell it in these big 10-pound bags, you know, and well, actually probably about 30 pounds now that I think about it. And you get the bags home, and it's just perfect. And what it does, it locks the track in place just like the real ballast does. I mean, my track in my backyard, you can try move, it doesn't move around. It's fantastic, and it's good drainage. And I asked them one time at D-Rock, I said, where do you get this driveway trap? From Dresser, Wisconsin. Yeah. That's where the Soo Line gets their ballast.
The real, same as the real stuff.
The real stuff, yep.
That's pretty realistic looking then.
Very neat.
Let me ask about, you ever heard of people using chicken grit?
I have, but you want the driveway trap because it locks. You don't want anything that's round or like pebbles.
Well, chicken grit was kind of like that too.
But that tends to wash away. Like I've used shingle granules. You can get shingle, and that's pretty cool. But it tends to wash away. It's not
quite as locked
dense
in.
as much. Yeah, as much.
All right.
Yeah.
We have another question here from another guest. I want to have a hands-on operation of the turnouts on the HO scale layout I am building. So I'm installing manual switch stands for turnouts I can conveniently reach. However, I am building a hidden staging yard. What is the most economical yet reliable switch motors you would recommend for these turnouts? I am installing Atlas Code 83 custom line turnouts.
Well, now for the staging yard, they should be probably electric operated from a panel. Do you think, Doug? Is that?
Well, hands down, I would say a Circuitron Taurus.
Yes.
I mean, they're the best switch motor
you
around.
Can still get them. Yep.
They have auxiliary contacts on them for other, lights and things. And you can also, if you look in the instruction sheet, it'll show you how you can hook them up in tandem, so you can actually, rather than selecting each individual switch, you can actually select a route
If you
down a
yes,
ladder.
That's what I've done, and
Yeah.
I've even used. I'm been around for a while, so I'm comfortable with
Yeah.
using the old Chemtrons, NJ, the old switch machines,
Yeah.
and using the old GH Remember GH products had the push button with the lights for your control panels, and I substitute the little bulbs that burn out anyway, the little 6-volt bulbs. I substitute them for LEDs.
So that
because
you're
it's-
still using the old solenoid?
Yes, and like I said, the bulbs burn out. I just
Well.
put a little miniature LED in there. But
There you go.
it depends now. If you're in your staging yard, if it's accessible, you can simply use the Caboose Hobbies and have a manual ground throws.
You could, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, personally, I still like the tortoise. I think it's the best way
I like
go,
to have
but,
it's nice
yeah,
to, on a staging yard to have a panel and lit up, and you can do your
Yep.
routes and
Yep.
see it lit up on your panel, yes.
Hopefully that's helpful. All right, let's move on to Max. Max asks, how would you suggest modeling a decorative fountain? I want it to be in the middle of my pond. I want to use some kind of simulated water spray, but not using real water. So not a functional fountain.
This is an indoor railroad we're talking about, indoor scene?
Oh, I think so. I mean,
yeah.
what I've done on little waterfalls is actually used tinsel.
Oh,
You could make a mold for the shape if he's doing that, like where the water comes straight up and crowns down. You can actually make a fine something you could use for a shape, you know, and then spread the tinsel out like the water, and then you put something like a little gloss medium on there, spray it on with a sprayer, you know, because then you want it to dry so that it'll retain that shape. And I've seen that done, and it really looks neat with the sparkle from the tinsel.
and it's a great time of year
that
to go
sounds-
pick some
Yeah.
up.
Yep.
Or maybe if you're like me, it's just hanging out on your floor
Yeah,
after the decorations.
Just after Christmas, just save a handful and away you go.
Oh, hopefully that works out. Don Bowman is asking, what is the best technique for building a lift-out section? Is it better to go with a flip-up, flip-down, or swing-out section instead?
I guess it depends on your situation. I've been dealing
Yeah.
with that lately. I have a lot of design situations in my basement when I built that I live with, but I've been putting some, to say the least. So I recently redid my lift. I have a scene that spans my aisle. It's about a 4-foot long scene, and I wanted to make it removable for if I have, let's say, I have a group come over and see the railroad. They don't have to duck under. So I found this material. I'm comfortable with doing an actual lift out personally, and I use plugs on the end to go to your track, your rails, to make a quick disconnect situation.
Yep.
Now I found this material at Menards, this angle, aluminum angle, L angle. It's like 1 inch. They have different sizes.
That's just what I was
And
going to say.
I'm going to try that.
Yep.
And it's easy to drill in and put metal screws.
Yep.
It's like working with wood. It's aluminum, and
But better, 'cause it's
better and
it's
strong. It doesn't
stronger
it
and
doesn't
smooth and
sag.
straight.
My old one
Yep.
sagged, so I
Yep.
thought I'm going to try this. I'm going to use the pink foam and put inside the L's of the angle iron.
Exactly.
And that's what I built my Minnesota Transfer lift out
So-
module with. I can take that out in 10 seconds. It'll pop out.
And it's lightweight.
It's lightweight, and it's like
Perfect.
3.5 feet.
And the swing depends on your particular situation in the room. I mean, do you want it to drop down or
I've
lift up
seen-
or
yep.
lift out? I mean, it kind of depends on what the particular situation is.
Yes.
I'd say. But
When in doubt-
we agree on the aluminum.
When in doubt, go with the lift out.
Yep,
That's what
yep.
That's what I'm doing.
All right, thumbs up for the lift out section. Jack asks, do you guys model and detail the areas of your layout that no one can see?
Yeah, I might be guilty of some of that. Yes, I have an area where it's, like I said, my railroad is so not built to how a normal railroad would be. I have crawl unders, I have duck unders. For example, I have where the Soo Line dead ended before they went into the tunnel in St. Paul. Well, to get to that, you crawl under and you pop out, and there's a scene that, unless I bring people to it, you don't even know that scene's back there. And there's another scene right above it, the Westminster Tower is there.
So you could maybe view it from any direction.
You can go in
Yeah.
there and look
Yeah.
at the scene, but you have to crawl under and pop out, and there's this area in my basement that's scenic. But I can go back there, I can bring somebody back there, we can enjoy the scenery. But it's nothing that you're not going to even know it's there unless I bring you to it. So,
Well, you know what I was going to say, and I sort of, I mean, I probably do more detailing on the side that, you know, from a kind of a theatrical standpoint, more from the side that you see. But you know, what we're doing nowadays with the camera cars and the little cameras you're going to put in your layout,
Yes.
so you're going to get viewing angles that you would normally wouldn't have had in the old days.
right.
Right.
So, you
I've
know,
even thought of putting a camera back there and hooking it up
Yeah.
to a monitor on my backdrop in the main room.
well, I showed, you know, we've had this camera car on the air here, and we've done some layouts with it. And I'll tell you, you get a whole different view of your layout from the camera car. You're seeing things that, viewing angles you wouldn't normally see, and you're getting it from the engineer's eye, looking down the track and all that. So I'd recommend that if you want to just do something cool, really get a neat, completely new view of your layout, build a camera car and put one of these miniature cameras on.
You need to bring the camera car over to my railroad.
Well,
We'll go through Cardigan Junction with it. That would be
If
so
we get
neat.
enough people that want to see it, yeah, by all means. No,
Neat.
we've been talking about, we will do that
Challenge
sometime.
issued.
Sometime very soon, we will do that.
Let's move on to Will Anand, who is saying, oh, this is a throwback to what we were talking about the multiple scales. A friend of mine has a 3-level layout, O on the bottom, HO in the center, and N on the top. Every level is independent. So it can be done.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
Yep.
Graham is
neat.
following up, referring to the 1970s era.
That's perfect. That relates to Shoreham being used when it was a real yard, and they had a lot of transfer jobs that would go between, for example, the MNNS Railroad. That was a handoff point for that railroad to the Soo Line. So the Soo Line would have cars available for the MNNS to take back down to Northfield and from Humboldt Yard. So they ran
yeah,
many
definitely with it, because
transfers.
the MNNS, well, I'm sure Graham knows that, but where the junction, the MNNS junction, was it?
They still call it, yeah, they still call it MNNS Junction.
Or MNNS
Crystal,
Junction
yeah.
up in Crystal, yeah, it was just west of Humboldt Yard, so it was perfect, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get really detailed with our next question from Phil. I am hoping to model myrtle trees that flower. Do you have any ideas on how to simulate the buds on the trees?
I'm out. No, I think that's a different part of the country, isn't it, Doug?
Yeah, actually, we'll have to do some research on that, because I'm not
Yes.
even sure what a myrtle tree is.
Like I was saying,
But,
I love watching the how-to videos that Alan Keller did, all these railroads. And one of the things I remember, one of the gentlemen did the Santa Fe in the Southwest, and he showed how he made, they're called Joshua trees. And he used the little pepper corn, they called it, little
Yeah.
round, and it's like, it was amazing. There's so many neat techniques
There's
for
different,
trees.
yeah, you'd have to find like a herb, some kind of an herb that had that
Right.
look. I know Scenic Express has different, there are various ground covers and all that kind of stuff that actually looks like it has those little type of seeds
Like-
in it.
like
And
for-
where if you're gonna sprinkle it on the tree, you know, use the
Yes.
armature and then sprinkle it on the tree. So you might check Scenic Express. Otherwise, go to the grocery store in the herb department.
See, Doug and I, if we show a future,
Yeah.
how to tree. I make trees all the time. I use sage. The sage for up here, we have to model oak trees,
So
elm
yeah,
trees, birch trees.
we'll have to do some research, and we are
Right.
gonna do a tree show sometime coming up.
That'll be fun.
Yes, we'll start working. We'll all research myrtle trees. Oh, Claire from France says, you're welcome if you want to make a live here in France.
Okay.
Oh, okay. She's got HO 30 and 40s German trained models.
Perfect. Well,
Fantastic.
Neat.
what town?
Oh, she didn't
didn't
say
say.
what town. I don't think we
Okay.
can be picky.
Yeah,
We'll just go.
We'll go. Just get it all set up. And we'll be there.
So we'll take a little pause for a moment as maybe you think of some more questions to put in
Well, in the meantime,
and see what's going
Oh.
on here.
Let's do the Jeep. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, let's do that.
We're
As long as we have time.
gonna fire up this G-scale engine for you guys here.
Perfect.
All right.
I'm ready.
Look at that. I didn't even walk in front of the camera.
Oh, very good
But,
technique.
Leah, can you hand me the throttle?
I sure can. Here we
Thank
go.
you. Okay. Turn on our throttle. Let's fire this up, you guys. The thing about G-scale, what's cool, what got me hooked on G-scale was the sound, the
Yeah.
lighting. I can put any lighting effect, which I do in HO now.
What? By the way, what diameter speaker can you put in there?
This has a
What
pretty
is it,
good
about
size
a
one.
3
This is-
inch maybe?
Yeah, 3 inch, and they generally put them in the
Yeah, in the fuel tank. Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
But there's lots of room in a G scale. You can put them in the compartment. Makes a nice baffle, as a real speaker would act. Well, so far so good.
There we go.
All right, and we wanted to show off our fancy lighting here. See, so we're gonna turn on our headlight. Should come on with F0. There's our headlight. We have a front Mars light that can come on. There's our they call it a Mars or a gyro light.
Gyro light.
And we have the rear. We can even turn one on the rear, which we're not seeing, of course, right now. And we have, back then they had, well, the railroads have what, for at night, they're called ground lights. So ground lights would be this. See how the lights come under the cab? That lights up the ground that night so they can tell when the engine's moving.
Yeah.
I guess you can't really see it that much.
And number boards should be number boards, F11. So if I do that, the number
There you
boards,
go.
there are the number
Look
boards.
at that.
And
Nice.
let's ring the bell. See if the bell is going to ring here. Cool. Now you might want to plug your ears, Leah, for the horn here. Are you ready?
Oh boy. Okay.
See, I told you. Now let's see if we can get a little, if we put the smoke unit on it, we might get a little smoke. Now, I think my smoke fluid is buried in snow right now in the backyard, so
With
there might
everything
be
else.
just enough to get a little smoke coming out of this thing.
Oh, I see a little
little
bit.
bit,
There's
yeah,
a
it's-
little bit there.
Yeah, it's coming a little, there is a little smoke coming out. Now Nate, I'm gonna try to make it a little more straight. This is called air wire. I got hooked on air wire from Marv, of course, from about 3 years
Well,
ago.
explain air wire a
Air
little
wire
bit before
goes
you do
through the
that.
air
How the smoke
like a model airplane. Goes through the air into the airplane to run the airplane. Same with, so I don't have to keep my track clean anymore.
Oh, there we go.
So here you go. You can run your locomotive
Now,
without track.
If I ran it, it could go right off the edge of this cable if I'm not careful, of course. We'll stop it. We might want to reverse the direction. So let's reverse it. It's
Yes.
That is so cool, Bob.
It's cool.
Now, you know, the other thing is, too,
Yeah. Hey, the smoke's... oh, boy.
Excuse me.
I was
All
going to
right,
say,
we'll turn that off.
way back when, I couldn't tell you
So there
which
you go.
episode, but we did an episode of Track Talk Live.
She's
your
smoking
backyard.
out. Yeah, we did, like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So you
if
can
they
see that if you
they
want.
can look it up online
Oh, okay.
and actually see this locomotive in operation.
Fantastic.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, very,
Now,
very
let me
cool.
turn it off. There. Let it air out in here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Perfect.
We're always doing all of the
Yeah.
fun activities in the air here.
Oh. Well, real quickly, also
Yes.
I wanted to talk about when I do my modeling projects, any modeling
yes.
project, I am always inspired by the prototype, a prototype photo. And nowadays with online and just multiple resources for books,
Right.
for freight car. Morning Sun has an array. I have almost every one of the freight car books. Here's my, Ken Soros came out with this with the Soo Line Historical Society. He came out with a freight car book, a Soo Line freight car book. It's invaluable. Graham, I'm sure, has this book in Australia. It's like the Bible for Soo Line modelers.
No, I was going to say, you know, a lot of historical societies have books like that.
Yes.
And if you're interested in a particular railroad, I would say go to the Historical Society's website. And I mean,
Yes.
I do Southern Pacific, and there's a huge, there's probably 6 volumes that were done by one of the guys in our Historical Society named Tony Thompson, who, I mean, all kinds of car data. I mean, the plans, everything. So for specific things, try your Railroad Historical Society.
When I'm modeling a car, a freight car, for example, I need to know, with my 1977 era, I want to know where the ACI plate goes, the lube plates go, the little data that has been applied, the reweigh. They patch things out, they repaint. I like to know that.
Yep, I see this one here has the big one has the EMD builders plate on
See
it.
it? Well, see,
Yep.
my backyard is 1970. So I actually have an era for my backyard. So this was the Burlington. It wasn't painted Burlington Northern yet. And so anything in my backyard represents the year of 1970.
I've always liked that paint job. That is
It's,
really
it's
nice
very
paint job.
classy, isn't it?
It looks like there's a collection of people in the chat on YouTube that are all requesting a camera car for your layout.
Well, Doug and I are talking about it.
We
So
will- we'll
it's
do
in the
it.
works.
We'll do it real soon.
I started dabbling with taking video with my own camera finally. But otherwise, Douglas Hildebrandt has been coming over and posting on YouTube videos of my railroad, and he does such an excellent job of editing and producing these. He puts the real train sounds to my models, and it's kind of amazing.
That's
actually.
very talented. That's amazing.
Well, we'll have to do it then.
Yes,
Request has been
Yep.
noted.
We will do it.
I like it.
Oh, Claire Lee says near Brest. So in France, near Brest, Lanveoc on the seaside. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but on the seaside sounds great.
Sounds
so.
good.
It sure
And,
does.
Book us a
now
flight.
what does she model? She models in.
HO 30 and 40s German
Why don't
train
you send us
models.
some pictures of your modeling? We'd like to see that. And that would
Fantastic.
be a kind of an incentive to go there, right?
I love how we're turning this into just a France vacation.
Yeah.
Oh, Matt's got a question. Matt Messer says, oh, a beginner here. What are the pros, cons of putting an inch of foam on top of hardboard base of a layout?
So what?
Oh,
type of
hardboard, maybe like, is he talking plywood maybe?
Oh,
You don't really
yeah.
need to.
Yeah, you wouldn't need
But,
to.
but, you know, you want to have some support periodically, you know, some stringers periodically to support the foam. But you really don't need a hardboard underneath.
You really don't. That foam
Yeah.
is so. If you use
Yeah.
the 2-inch foam,
Yeah.
for example, it's very strong. You can put, if you want to put splicer sections with masonite pieces, and you could
Alright.
use screws for that.
And
to
you can
fasten
actually
them.
use, we're talking about that aluminum stuff, angles and channels. You can
Yes.
actually use that as a sleeper underneath the foam, you know, to
Yes.
support it every 16 inches or whatever, something like that, 2 feet, you know, so.
As I was saying, it cuts so well with
Yeah.
a hacksaw. It's like cutting wood. It's very easy to work with.
If you go crazy in your basement, it can look like a blizzard happened, you know?
Oh yes.
A pink blizzard.
Oh yes.
Then you'll have to do
Right.
some
Yeah.
cleanup.
Yeah.
Vacuum cleaner.
We still have a little over 10 minutes for some questions, but before you keep feeding in your questions, I actually would like to encourage you to start dropping some suggestions down in the chat box of things you might want to see on future live events. I know we've been hinting at quite a few ideas already, but as we're planning these upcoming live events, especially for the upcoming year, we would love your input and make sure that we're doing things that are really interesting to you, so that anything that we're bringing to the live events are going to be useful and fun. And like I said, maybe I can try my hand
Yep,
at some
gonna
of
get
these
Leah-
techniques,
get
who
Leah
knows?
going. Yep.
But definitely drop those in as well as any other questions, and we'll
And,
get to as many as possible with our
They could
lives.
send, now if you're having a problem with something, they could send us a description or a photo, and we could try to duplicate it here live. That'd be another neat
Oh, that would
neat
be,
thing.
yes, really, really useful.
So, send your cards and letters right this way. We'll look at them.
We have another question in from Paul. Paul asks, what is the best ways to convert G-scale track-supplied power to battery power radio-controlled air-wire engines?
The best way would be to, when I buy my engines from RLD Hobbies, and I believe he's down in Southern Illinois, I tell Robbie what I want. He supplies the battery, and that powers the air wire system, and I put my own lighting in.
Do you install the actual airwire receiver though?
I do, yes.
okay,
I've done a few, now I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they can do that too for you. These places are glad to do it for you.
Why don't we, that'd be another thing for an upcoming show. Why don't we show a picture of the interior of one of these to show the installation?
Yes, and Marv does this all the time with his
Yeah.
G-scale. He has somebody do
Yeah.
it for him.
Yeah, okay. But I can see if you kind of get used to it, do it a few times, you kind of develop the talent.
You want to be able to know how to get into it if you have
Yeah.
to do a repair.
Yeah.
Or, yes.
All right, fantastic. I made a mistake. We're going to correct it. Claire Lee. It's he, not she. Claire Lee, like General
okay.
Chenault.
Okay.
Oh, well.
That is my bad. I'm very sorry.
well.
If we're going to visit, we might as well know.
Once we get to know you a little
That's
bit,
right.
it'll work out.
But that's a very useful hint. Thank you very much for sharing. We've got another pause in some questions here and a few minutes left. So is there any other photos that you were thinking about sharing, or any ideas you have? I know you brought some equipment to
I
look
can
at.
show this now. Another show we want to do is building structures.
Yes.
And we talked about some of Bob's buildings. I have buildings that people have been requesting to see. And I think we want to actually mock up a building right here on live on the show. But I'm working with another guy who is another Soo Line modeler in Bloomington, Minnesota. But he's doing a lot of exterior building lighting, street lights, and that kind of thing. And he wants to use the very small 1.5 volt bulbs. And so we got him some of these boards. And I want to mention this because a lot of modelers don't know about it. But GRS micro lighting is really more of a dollhouse provider. But they make this board here, which is a very simple board. It will take your lighting bus wire, 12, 16, 18 volt bus wire, and then an output of 1.45 volts, slightly under the 1.5 volts for the bulbs. And it will run up to 50 1.5 bulbs, which is really cool. So what we're doing in Brad's case, we're using 6 of these boards, basically one in each one of his town areas, you know, so he'll have his lighting bus, and then he can do a kind of a mini sub bus off of here that can light all the bulbs in one town, basically 50 light bulbs. And with this, you don't have to worry about the bulbs burning out. You know, people use resistors on 1.5 bulbs, but it's too easy to overload your bulb and burn them out. Those 1.5 bulbs are real touchy.
Yeah.
So I'm giving a shout out for GRS Micro Lighting. They're actually in Rochester, Minnesota.
Ooh.
It's just down the
Close
road.
by.
GRSmicrolighting.com.
There it is.
There you go.
Something to look forward
Very
to.
cool.
I've got, right now, this looks a little bit more like a comment. Rich Mastriano says, I use 2-inch foam on 1/2-inch plywood, as I usually have to get on top of the layout. I am doing O gauge. My girlfriend's N and Z scale. I'll be using just foam. I'm not sure if there's a question that you had about that, or any comments that you two would like to share. Just
Well, my experience has been if you try to walk on foam, you're probably going to put a dent in it. You know, like with your knee or something. And so I guess, well,
That's true.
Yeah, that's the
You
problem.
have to
I mean, you
keep
can
that in
certainly
mind.
have support underneath the foam, but then you might have to lay something on top of your scenic layout, like a pad or something, if you're going to actually kneel on it or walk
Yes,
on
I
it.
have a few situations where I
Yeah.
have to be concerned about getting on top of scenery, and otherwise, be concerned when you build your railroad that you can reach readily, because the foam is so versatile and easy to work with. In fact, if Nate wanted to take this shot on my computer here, I can show a quick. This is when I built my bridge module for the Rock Island, the Great Western going over the Rock Island spine line. And I built this bridge scene about 2 years ago to bring down to St. Louis. And this module unplugs from the railroad, and I'm building, you can see my pink foam, I'm building my abutments here.
Oh, great.
And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this is I'm using just balsa wood for my bridge abutments. You can see I just used the Woodlands roadbed back there, and that's just glued down to the pink foam. And here I'm just showing my dimensions here. I'm building my abutments. I'm going to make my wood abutments, which I made out of balsa wood. And there's my shapes. I can shape it as to the prototype using my prototype photo there. And there's my bridge, my finished bridge kit I put together.
Nice.
And I'm
Yep.
testing it there, test fitting it. There's my prototype shot. I built it exactly like the prototype, which is still there to this day down by Rosemount. And there's that scene with and now I'm going to make my balsa wood look like cement. So I'm applying my, I'm actually using a lightweight spackle. And I'm going to make that look like the actual old 100-year-old concrete. I mean, this bridge was built like 100 years ago. So when you go there now, I mean, there's graffiti.
Yeah.
I'm going to model it like in the 70s. There's not quite as much graffiti.
No, we want to see you do that live, Bob.
Yes, but this gives you an example idea of working with the pink foam. I'm building this on that base of
Oh, and
pink
Rich
foam
just
here.
added, no dents so far. Works very
Oh,
well.
really?
And
So
there's-
that's great.
Now, say another thing, you know, Rich, what about an access hole? As Bob mentioned, how about an access hole rather than crawling on your layout?
Right.
Maybe you could cut in an access hole toward the back and do it that way.
You know, here I'm trying to make my concrete abutments look aged, so I'm using a wire brush to put the age marks as you see on the prototype there.
You know, I went to my local home improvement store here this summer, I guess it was, but they had a pack of 4 different sizes of little wire brushes.
Right?
So I bought the whole pack, and then it's, depending what you're doing, you get the correct size wire brush. But it's good to have some wire brushes around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use them for a lot of things outdoor,
Yeah.
for the ballast, for the railroad outdoors.
We had a suggestion from Graham.
Ah.
Loved the weathering, Bob, that you did the last time. So maybe a
That's
live tree building would be good.
That
All right.
really would, the tree
Yeah.
building
We gotta
would be,
do that.
because I have a little area in my basement where I build my trees. And I have a little bin where I have the ground foam for the leaves, and
By the way, that
Very
reminds
easy.
me, now, we've been talking about putting together a schedule. Now that we have Bob here, we're going to put together a schedule of the topics for the upcoming shows. And then, so we'll have that posted online, so you know what's coming up. And so if you have a particular request that you'd like to see sooner than later, let us know, and do it fairly soon so we can put our list together.
Yes. Always taking suggestions.
now, did we talk about the holiday train yet?
Not quite yet, we got to,
Okay, all right.
I think we
Yeah,
have time
that's
for
it.
this one last
Yeah.
question before we can talk about the holiday train,
cool.
because it's the holiday season. This is another one from Paul. Paul asks, is there a handy tool for measuring grade of the track as you build a G-scale layout outside?
Absolutely. I've dealt with this. That, on the railroad, the real railroad, they call that a grade and percentage of grade. So the rise of the grade on the prototype, it's 1 foot in 100 feet. So if the grade rises in 1 foot in 100 feet, that's a 1% grade. And so I built a little tool with a
Yeah.
with little markings in G-scale feet. And it's a stick that's 100 feet long in G-scale, and then the little markings are 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. And if you have a level on the top of that stick, that's how I do it. And I can see, oh, that's the percent of my grade there.
you know what you can do nowadays? You can actually buy a digital level that will show you the percent of grade without doing anything.
Yeah, but you know me, Doug, I'm a dinosaur. I mean, I've got my flip phone.
I'll tell you this, I have it's called Clinometer. It's on my iPhone. You can get an app called Clinometer that actually will do that. And for just little testing things, I can put my iPhone right
Yeah.
on it and read the grade. I've actually done that on a real railroad track, Bob.
Oh, neat.
Put my
That's-
iPhone
yeah,
right on the
you
rail
could. You
and
could
read
do
the
that.
read the grade right off of the. So I mean that's another way of doing it. But yeah, in the old days you had to use math.
Sometimes you have
Yeah,
to go back
yeah.
to the math.
So
Right? It's starting to scare me a little.
All right, let's hear about this
All right.
Christmas holiday
Okay.
train.
Well, if we take the, there we go. Now last year, I went down to the Mississippi River to take, every year the Canadian Pacific runs the holiday train into the Twin Cities. And last year, I'm gonna go down to the Camden Bridge and get my shot at the Mississippi River. And it's coming across, now what it does, it comes from St. Louis Park and backs out of Humboldt and backs all the way up to 37th Avenue up in my neighborhood. And because they can't run around the train, the engine's back, and he's on the other end of that train, and he's actually going backwards over the Camden Bridge.
now make sure that because there's a lot of out-of-town people here. This is the bridge over the Mississippi.
Yes, in North Minneapolis, Northeast is on the other side. Anyway, the next shot, I decided, this turned out pretty cool. I'm gonna have my Christmas cards. Yeah.
That's
Usually we have our cat featured in our Christmas cards. I thought this year I'm gonna do the holiday train. And now the holiday train's coming next week on the 11th. It's supposed to come through
It's already
St.
time.
Louis Park.
Yeah, I know it's going to be Christmas before you know it.
Yes.
Wow. Well, with that said, all that's left is just a quick reminder to
Yeah.
follow us on some social media channels. We've got Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram. Keep your suggestions coming. Doug is Mr. Clickety. We have our guest here, Chooch Rivard. And I am Leah. Until next time, this is Track Talk Live. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
See you soon.